So you just mentioned getting the James gig, Neil. So let's
Mm.
sort of jump into how that's been since, because you've been doing that for a long while now.
Yeah, that was. I left Van in. Oh, I don't know. It was very short, actually. It was something like maybe August, end of the summer of 2008, and I was thinking, oh man, what am I going to do now? You know, and then after the story I told you about the audition, um, I started working with James around October 2008. So you just never know what's going to happen. From one, you just can't perceive what's going to happen. So you just have to kind of go with it. So that's been a good sort of 15 years or so. I mean, it's been a bit on and off. There was one year where he used a different band. He got a different producer involved who wanted to use his guys, which was, fair enough. Um, but basically, it's been a 15-year gig, which is great. And unfortunately, I don't know if maybe you won't want to put this in there, but he's had a bit of a tragic thing recently with losing his wife.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's all off the table. That's all off the table right now. So nothing till possibly the end of the year. I'm fingers crossed for that. So, yeah. So working with James is, I mean, because before I started working with him, I thought, I'm a big fan huge fan of Stevie Wonder and Al Green, Otis Redding, Sam Cooke, that classic kind of soul American R&B. And yeah, there's a lot of Brits that kind of fit that style. But to me, even before I started working with him, I thought this guy is the real deal. He really has it. So to be playing with him that long is phenomenal. And the gig is great because we don't use click. There's no track. There's no screens around the drums. I don't wear any ears. It's just basically it's this old school, proper gig. Dynamics. Well, you've seen it, so yeah, it's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful gig, and he's a great guy, great singer. Great. So yeah, and just to be in a dressing room with him when he's playing a bit of guitar and singing a bit of Stevie or some Beatles, or it's the hairs on the back of your neck. Just oh my god, yeah. Even just thinking about it now, it's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
he's a phenomenal.
And sort of over that last sort of say 15 years with that James gig, you've also become a bit of a West End player in a few bursts of different stuff as well. First with.
Well, I mean, yeah, you and I have talked about this a little bit, and I thought about it the other day, and I thought, I, living in London, I think if you can play a lot of different styles and you can read and you're reliable and all the other little things that might go, you're ripe for the picking for doing shows, which I did shows where the first one I did was called Time back in the 80s with Cliff Richard. Now, it wasn't my gig, but I did it on occasion. And I've always done it because, the phone rings and do you want to come do a few? And if you're sitting around not doing too much, you might as well go do it, So I did things like chess, just only as a dep, So all through the 80s, 90s. But it wasn't something I particularly wanted to do. But now, I think the options for young guys staying and working in town. I mean, I was talking to my wife earlier about this. It's like I had the option of doing, not the option, but the opportunity of working on people's demos for jingles or for records. So a demo, a jingle, a TV series, a TV theme tune, or a film or record. I mean, that work has almost basically died out. So especially for rhythm section players, there aren't too many ways of staying in town, not going on the road, and working constantly. And also the other thing is I don't like not playing. I don't feel good when I'm not playing. It's great to sit here and practice a couple hours a day or whatever. That's great. But I don't like feeling kind of not match fit, so to speak. So if suddenly a big film session comes along, it's good to have been playing. So yeah, it's not something I really, really ultimately wanted to do, be involved in West End shows. But I've got to say, if you've got somebody like Beverly Knight, who kind of reminds me of James in a way, of James Morrison, there's that big soul voice and a beautiful voice box that's kind of just whatever she sings just sounds amazing. There's some great singers, but if the voice doesn't sound good, and that's not something I think you're blessed with that or you're not, and you think about people like Nat King Cole or Sinatra or Stevie or Otis Redding or Sam Cooke. They've just the sound of the voice is beautiful before they even sing. And she's definitely got that. So the current one I'm doing now it's a short run. It's only up until the summer, and we've only just been going a week. Is at the Dominion Sister Act, and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't look at the music, but I knew it was based in 1977. So I thought, that sounds pretty good. I can use all my, all those, the record Saturday Night Fever. A lot of those tunes have James Gadson, and Gad was very busy around that time doing the David Ruffin records, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Van McCoy, all that stuff, So I thought, this could be good, and it's amazing. The band, mainly young guys, are phenomenal. I mean, and the great thing is, we're in the pit. We're not tucked away. We're in the pit. So when I'm playing, I can feel the PA moving the air. So it feels very big, We've all commented on it. It's it's great. I mean, 10 times better than I even thought it might be. I knew it was going to be good with Beverly Knight singing, but it's great. And there's some I've marked up the parts. When you're going through this music and you don't really know the music too well, so you might mark some references, and on 2 of the parts I've written John Guerin to remind me of the style, So anytime I'm writing that, I'm thinking this is good, I'll get into that in some of these records. So yeah,
because this will be the second show you've done with Beverly. I think the last one was
I did.
Girl, which
Mm-hmm.
I was very lucky you let me come and sit in. I think on the last show or the penultimate show, and it was great. It just again no screens,
another phenomenal band.
No screens, live amps.
And the other thing is that I've been very blessed with is the freedom to contribute to the music. I think, well, why are they calling me for this? Why don't they call the guy, somebody who's done it before or whatever? But then I've been asked to do shows where you've basically got to play note for note what's on the page, and I don't have that kind of brain anymore. And I don't think I ever had that kind of brain, where you're just kind of duplicating somebody else's performance, and it doesn't need to be like that. Like a show like Hamilton or something. So I avoid those. I've never done a show like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, all the shows I think that I've known you do over the last, say, 10 years, 15 years with the Drifter's Girl and beautiful
Carole King
thing. I think you just give them the freedom with all of them. I know Steve said about the Carole King thing, you were just told, make it feel good.
Yeah, and so he and I sat down. I remember the first time I flew back from Los Angeles that morning and walked into the first day of rehearsal with Steve, and we played 3 or 4 tunes over and over. And each time we played them, we played a little bit different, and that just became, that's how it was. So when the energy changes within the band or on stage, I mean, like a gig basically. So yes, it's a West End show, but there's a lot of freedom there to play. So it's great, and I try and keep that. I'll hang on to that as long as I can, because I think it's very important, especially for rhythm section, to have because if they call it, not that you're going to play, you don't want to give somebody freedom that's going to play something inappropriate. It's like the language you use has to be appropriate for that music, and I'm a big fan of that whole Philadelphia, as I know Steve Pierce's, the whole TSOP thing, and that whole kind of, it was disco, but it was, we didn't know it was disco. They were just great tunes with a killer groove, So I feel like I can bring a lot of that knowledge, and the stuff that isn't written that I know would work, like toms instead of a snare drum, and tom with open hi-hat and that kind of language, cymbal with no bass drum, that kind of thing, as pushes.
Yeah, it makes.
So they'll have four. They'll have 4 on the floor written, and if you played the part as it is, the bass drum would follow the push, but that doesn't always work because you lose the momentum of the 4 on the floor. So you'll often hear Gadd or Gadsden play those. Just the push is just a kind of pushed cymbal, but the bass drum doesn't go with it. That kind of language, it's just nice.
Yeah, let's sort of bring it up to date with the, maybe some of your record collection as well as that you've pulled out, and maybe talk a little bit about your your friendship now with one Steve Gadd.
Oh, well, I mean, I first met up with Steve when I was 22, 1984. He was in London with David Sanborn, and man, they were the support band. The support band was David Sanborn, Don Grolnick playing piano, Marcus Miller playing bass, Hiram Bullock playing guitar, and Steve Gadd. That was the support band. Okay, it's a pretty good support band. Anyway, I met him after the gig, and I drove him all over London. We got food and everything, but then I didn't see him for years. And I've met him a few times on gigs. We did a gig at the Greek Theatre in Los Angeles, where it was French music in cinema. So I was playing with Leland Sklar, with Veronique Sanson, and Steve was playing with Michel Jonas. And that band was Steve, Abe Laboriel playing bass. I can't remember who the percussionist was. Anyway, so I've known him over the years, but over the last few years, I've made the effort to go see him all the time, every time he plays, and hang out quite a bit. So, and last year I got to spend a couple of proper full days with him, and we played through some of his Gaddaments, and typical how he is. He wanted to know about my thing that I'd done with Max Abrams and his approach to snare drum. So because I felt like a definite affinity with him, with Gadd. The way he plays, it's so beautiful, and this language and the time and everything, but particularly the snare drum thing, because Max Abrams was such he came from a different side, though. He came from more of a Scottish pipe band side of things. Steve was very interested in all that. Not that I can do the Scottish pipe band thing, but a little bit. And so that was just a joyous couple of days, just sharing that stuff with him, who, in my mind, just a true master, So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that's pretty special. So which
Yeah,
records
it's lovely.
did you pull out of your
Yeah,
back
so
catalogue?
I thought I would talk about not necessarily drum, not necessarily some for a drum reason, but usually throughout all, I think even though there's a drum influence, hugely throughout it's a musical influence as well, you know. And they're not really in any order. Maybe the first couple are, but as I showed this one earlier, so my brother is 13 years older than me. So in the late 60s, when I was very aware of music on the radio and listened to his records, he was very into Motown, Rolling Stones, Beatles. And my uncle was, as I said before, was a big band drummer. So I had this I mean, now I would still say, even now, that's the perfect recipe to hand somebody who wants to be a drummer. Motown, Beatles, Rolling Stones, big band. So you've got everything's kind of groove based, but you're learning song form, dynamics, everything, you know, from the best on the planet, basically. So yeah. So the first one is Motown. It's Isley Brothers, This Old Heart of Mine. That's my favorite Motown tune, really, I think. I mean, hard to pick, but because, you know, Smokey Robinson, Stevie, Diana Ross, Temptations, you know. So, yeah, Isley Brothers, This Old Heart of Mine. That was at the front, and it's probably my favorite. So, yeah. So, and I used to sit out in the garden and tap away on pillows on the grass during the summer and hear this music coming out the house. Yeah, it's great. So that's probably a very early one, but I still love that whole Motown sound, you know, kind of crunchy, hard-hitting drums, you know. Beatles, but I mean, I've got them all there, but how do you pick one? But so White Album. Yeah, fabulous. Yeah.
Two albums for the price of one in there.
Yeah. I mean, Ringo. Oh my, I mean, unbelievable. Yeah, fabulous. So so Motown, Beatles, Rolling Stones. Great record. Charlie, of course.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Yeah. And I mean, what can you say? It's the Rolling Stones. And then so that was all from my brother and hearing that stuff on the radio. And then, as I say, my uncle was a big band drummer, essentially. So he would play me lots of Buddy Rich and all that stuff. But he said to me, yeah, Buddy's amazing. But his favorite drummer was Sonny Payne, who played with Cat Basie. So this Sinatra Basie record has got Sonny Payne playing drums, and it's phenomenal. I mean, it's the groove, and talk about groove. And it really sort of shows that, you know, groove. I think when we hear the word groove, we tend to think of like funk or something. You know, groove. Oh yeah, boom, bad, boom, boom. You know, groove.
Yeah.
Insane. You know, it's just yeah. He was a bad man, Sonny Payne. Yeah, and so Sinatra, Basie, and the arrangements are Quincy Jones.
Yeah,
it's pretty good trinity there. And while we're in big band mode,
yes.
Charlie. Oh, actually, and on my music stand here is all the so that record I got when I was 10, and it's been my Bible ever since. That record. I mean, the language on that record, and when I got hold of Kenny Clare's transcriptions, I was working on that when I was 10 years old. You know, so yeah.
I need to get a
no,
hold
not
of
10,
those.
13. I got the record when I was 10, but these came out in 75, so I was 13. Yeah, so I started working on that stuff then. So and it's so I've got two versions. This was the original version with Kenny sorry, Kenny and Ronnie Stevenson. Masters, total masters. Could play anything. Yeah, incredible. I mean, Kenny played on things like, I mean, just two massive James Bond references. Kenny played on the theme tune from James Bond. Ronnie played on Diamonds Are Forever, the Shirley Bassey. I mean, there's another groove for you. Heavy groove, Diamonds Are Forever. It sounds like James Gadsden or somebody. It's monstrous. People don't give him the credit. It's Ronnie Stevenson, you know. But that was my copy, which was like, you can see they were trying to appeal to the kids. You know, oh, yeah, fancy.
Tubby Hayes on that as well.
Yeah, those arrangements are phenomenal. Yeah. And then we were talking about Cubby O'Brien playing with the Carpenters. Mm. And this was a live at the Palladium, Carpenters live at the Palladium. And it's a great record, but side 2 is a medley. The whole thing is a medley on side 2. And just to show you my dedication to this stuff, when that came out, I transcribed note for note, like all the tunes, like, you know. So this is what I was up to. Sad, isn't it? That's what I was up to when I was a kid, transcribing Cubby O'Brien's drum parts and drawing pictures of his drums on the back of the. I think I was pretty obsessed. I think I was pretty dedicated. I was dedicated to the cause, you know. But I think what I like about it is he's got this huge, as I said, drum set, but it's used very sporadically. He knows when a low tone is needed. He knows when a high tone is needed, and he knows when they're all needed. You know, so it's great. Yeah, very, very cool. But I don't think you like. It's a lot of these albums. Like, you can't hear this on Spotify or Apple or anything. It's not there. You need to. It might be on YouTube, but it's nice to have your original record. You know. And what I would do, I transcribed this, and I would sit in my little practice. Well, it was the bedroom. I'd put on my headphones, open up the charts, I had it on cassette. Start the cassette and play the gig top to bottom. You know, like I was on a gig or a session or something. So, and put myself in that world. I mean, I kind of was transported to. I mean, I kind of, for all intents and purposes, was Cubby O'Brien. You know, like I felt the pressure of getting the tempos right and nailing the fills, and yeah. So,
yeah, I think we've all probably done that at some point.
Self-imposed pressure. You know,
I remember, it's good. On that note, I used to set my kit up in front of the television when I was probably 8 or 9, and I had a DVD. I know we've spoke about this on the podcast before. Hank Marvin live DVD from the 90s. No way. With
Brian.
Pete May.
Oh, Pete May. Sorry, yes, that's right. Yeah,
it was Pete May at that time, and that was my Bible for a little while of trying to suss out what he was doing, and yeah, that was one of the big reasons I ended up getting a recording custom, was seeing his on that going.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it?
That's, you know, it was the first. You know, I had my Ringo phase, and then I saw this guy with 4 tom-toms. What the hell's that?
Yeah, you know, crazy man. What is he doing? He's lost the plot. What is he doing?
With a massive mullet as well at that point. And I was like, oh, this is, you know, and it was that
fantastic
sort of period where they were using sequencers on a few tunes, and he was playing along to a drum machine, you know. And I was like,
that's what I mean. You know, it's a lot of it. A lot of the fashion is not just for the physical drum set; it's the fashion of the day, whatever the music calls for.
Yeah.
So, you know. Okay, let's keep going. Although I was into jazz a little bit, you know, I was raised on with my uncle on those big band records, but it took a while for me to discover kind of small group jazz like bebop, Blue Note, that kind of thing. But anyway, so I pulled out a few of those. This one, Joe Henderson, In and Out with, I mean, what a band. Kenny Durham, Joe Henderson, McCoy Tyner, Richard Davis playing bass, and Elvin Jones. And Elvin plays incredible on this, but the melodies, they're like, they're really incredible melodies. It's not just, you know, a lot of jazz can be, and is sometimes intended to be, just kind of a platform for an expression, like a you know, a kind of search for something to say, like maybe so the solos over certain changes or whatever, which is fine. But the melodies on that record are so strong; it's incredible. You can kind of listen to it and be literally, there'll be like a earworm all day in your head. You know, incredible. Same. So that's the Joe Henderson record, and same for this one, Hank Mobley, Soul Station, which is Hank Mobley, Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, and Art Blakey. Incredible. And again, groove. Oh my God. Yeah. And then this one has got everything. Nefertiti Miles, which is probably to be expected because that's a giant of a record. It's a bit more, I mean, the melodies are still strong, but it's not so much about the changes. It's, it's a different bag. But of course, the classic quintet, Miles, Wayne, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Tony Williams. Yeah, incredible. I'm buzzing through these because it's more than I thought. Crescent, John Coltrane. Crescent's John Coltrane. I mean, what more do you need to know? Yeah, fabulous. I'd suggest, I mean, if anybody's listening to this, just stick them all on a playlist and see what you like. When I was on the QE2, we pulled into Puerto Rico, and I recorded lots of salsa, Cuban, New York kind of style salsa, and this record has got most of my favorites on it. Eddie Palmieri, his rhythm section, again, groove, incredible. No drums, all authentic Cuban rhythm section. But yeah, the melodies are incredible, and the groove is, yeah, incredible. So anything by Eddie Palmieri, but that Eddie Palmieri Gold is kind of a best of. That's great. And then my other love is Brazilian. So this is probably the most well-known Brazilian album of all time. João Gilberto. And I think it's the first. This is kind of the one that kind of set the pace for everything coming out of Brazil, like bossa nova, you know. So yeah, that's a great one. And another giant, this guy Gilberto Gil. This was his first solo record. Again, no drums, just great grooves, great melodies, and his voice is insane. He plays guitar and sings amazing. Bob Marley live. Actually, his bass player, family man, just died a couple of weeks ago. But that talk about how a rhythm section should knit together. You know, Carlton Barrett, who's phenomenal, I mean, absolutely phenomenal. And they were brothers, Carlton Barrett and Aston, family man Barrett, bass and drums. They were brothers. And yeah, when I wanted to so badly to go and see the live gig in London, but I was about 13 or 14 and my mum wouldn't let me go. So I bought, they filmed it and they showed it on cinemas around the country, in cinemas around the country. And so I bought a ticket to go see it at the cinema. I was so desperate to see it. I'm a huge Bob Marley fan, and yeah, groove. Yeah, everything on these records is groove, really. So I think we're in good shape here.
Yeah.
And so some of these records, like I say, are fairly obvious, but some of them, there's a few not so obvious ones coming up now, big time. Dr. John, and he's a big. If you don't know about Dr. John, piano player from New Orleans, and it's always, obviously very New Orleans grooves. But this record is slightly different. It has Will Lee playing bass, and then it's basically like a Stuff kind of band. Steve Gadd, Will Lee, Richard T, Hugh McCracken, and John Trappier playing guitar. So, but again, the grooves and the songs incredible. City Lights, that's called. Okay, some really slightly more obscure now. So that's the soundtrack for Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro movie. And in the movie, all this music is in the movie, but in the movie, it's all orchestral. And this guy called, I can't remember his name, David Bloom, I think his name is. He arranged some of the melodies and the ideas for orchestra and rhythm section, but it's only on the record. It's on Spotify and stuff. But so this, Charlie, is the record that I knew was John Guerin.
Yeah. And
it just reeks of 70s New York cop themes, dark. It's threatening. It's just a threatening album, I learned so much of the hi-hat from this record and the power of the hi-hat, whether you play 8s, 16th, whether you open it, whether you play the bell, where you close it. I mean, this guy, John Guerin, I mean, he's on all the like Dirty Harry, Lalo Schifrin kind of movies where it's very like again, threatening kind of gangster cop show kind of thing. So, and I've been listening to this recently on the way into the show every night. There's only 5 tunes. If you listen to it on Spotify, it's the first of these 5 tunes is about almost all the way through the playlist. The first tune is called Theme from Taxi Driver. So, and there's only 5 tunes at the end. It's the last 5. Charlie, do you know a guy called Roger Pope?
Oh, that name rings a bell.
Elton John, Blue Moves. 1976. Yeah, 76. I was 14. This came out, and I revisited it about 2-3 years ago, and I didn't realize how much of an influence this album had on me. I mean, it's incredible. Of his use of a bigger kit, but not always used like the way somebody like Billy would use it, Billy Cobham, but used in a very, just knowing when you need certain tones, So that Blue Moves, that's a great record. And in a similar vein, I'll get to that later. This is a no-brainer. Stuff live in Japan.
Yeah.
How are we doing for time? Are we doing all right?
I think we've got 3 minutes left or so before the meeting kicks
We
us
might
off.
have to do one more. Can we do one more? We don't have to do the whole thing.
Yeah, another 5-10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do this one then, and then we'll finish up. So Stuff, I mean, Ultimate Groove. Just Richard T by himself, Ultimate Groove. And this one is, how are you not going to drool over that picture of Gadd on the Yamaha?
Yeah.
So live in Japan, it's a great. It's kind of a weird sounding record. The drums are kind of treated a little bit gated and so, but it's not short of groove. We can really get down to business now. Well, this one is an absolute massive game changer for me. It is even a contender for my favorite album of all time. But Paul Simon, One Trick Pony, just phenomenal. Just the way that he very nicely signed that for me. Yeah, couldn't believe it when I heard this record. Just I'd never heard drums played like that in my life, and I still haven't. So it's just that's a real set the bar so high for musicality. And I didn't even realize it was a movie. So for years, and then saw the movie, like, oh my god, yeah. So that's great. And actually, I've stuck in the front there. That's a picture of Steve on the tour, taken by Tony Levin on stage. Yeah, Tony took that. Yeah, it's great. So yeah, that's a massive game changer. One Trick Pony tour, fabulous. Another game changer, Earl Klugh, Finger Paintings. Again, no, these are not obvious albums,
Yeah.
Steve Gadd and Harvey Mason, incredible. And it was the first album I realized that you could play. I mean, I knew Billy played open-handed, and Simon was doing that too, but Gadd was doing it on this record, but not like those guys. He was still leading with the right hand, but it was the first time I realized that it was permissible to put the left hand on the hi-hat and play kind of grooves around the set, So yeah, that's another big game changer. And then George Benson, Living Inside Your Love, great double album. Also Gadd, of course, Will Lee, all the great New York guys. This had a great version of Love Ballad, which was a LTD, a single by LTD, Jeffrey Osborne, and George Benson did a great version of it. And what I love about this kind of record is that thing that you can tell the guys are given an arrangement, but they're just playing. It's just their input is what's important. Yeah, beautiful grooves. So yeah, Heavy Weather.
Yeah,
Weather Report. Alex Acuna just playing killer drums. My favorite Weather Report album of all time. And it was weirdly when I was on the Isle of Wight doing that kind of big band gig. The girl in the chalet next to me was one of the dancers, and she used to play. She used to play Finger Paintings by Earl Klugh and Weather Report, Heavy Weather, almost non-stop on her turntable, and I'd hear it through the walls of the chalet, and I think, wow, what a artistic kind of, she was incredible. So I asked her, I was brave enough to say, what's that music you listen to? And it turned out to be this. And still now when I hear it, I get, it sounds kind of like, it's different music. It's not what I'd heard before, and I can still get those same feelings now. It's great record. Just got to give this guy some props. What an influence. Led Zeppelin, John Bonham. But it's Led Zeppelin 3, which is maybe not the one that people always go for. I love this record because it's got the lighter side too, a bit of the acoustic stuff. Yeah, great. Another major influence, Peter Frampton.
That's great.
Live. I love that record.
Yeah.
A fantastic drummer, a guy called John Siamos, who was a New York session guy, and was I didn't realize, but was very heavily into John Bonham. But yeah, fantastic record, great playing, and just a game changer. And then I had a good sort of, not really a prog period, but I remember reading in an interview that Steve Gadd loved the sound of Supertramp, and so this is not the obvious one either. 74.
Yeah.
Crime of the Century. Man, the tunes and the playing is off the scale. Anyway, and just the engineered by Ken Scott, and it's incredible. Yeah. Genesis, Second Out, Phil Collins, Chester Thompson, Bill Bruford. I mean, you know, when you buy that as a kid, and it's just drums, 3 drum sets on stage, you know, it's like, oh man, come on, you know, got to have that.
Yeah.
And Phil plays his butt off on that album. Yeah, incredible. This is my favorite album with Simon Phillips. Perilous Journey. And I spoke to Simon about what kit he used on this, and he said he used half of his Ludwig Octopus, 1 bass drum, 6, 8, 10, 12, small, and I think 13, 14 on the floor, like a GAD kind of set. So 4 tiny rack toms and a couple of floors, and just the way he uses those, he uses them so melodically on this album. So I would really make sure everybody listens to that. And there's only one left, but it's 4 albums, but I can't break them up. These are my all-time favorites above anything. I bought them all together when I was 14 years old. They're all Stevie Wonder records. Talking Book. This is in order. And these are the albums I know the most by heart. I've listened to them thousands of times. Talking Book, Inner Visions, Fulfilling This First Finale, and my favorite album of all time, Songs of the Key of Life.
Yeah.
And he plays a lot of drums he plays most of the drums on all those records, which is incredible. So those are like one album to me. Those 4 are just insane. You know, and what a body of work, just those 4. And that's all in from like 1972 to 76, so a 4-year period. Yeah, monstrous. So I think if you put all those albums together, that's kind of a good, that would be a good way to say what I've been influenced by.
Yeah,
you know?
It is. It's you know, it's one of those, when you look at someone's sort of favorite records, like I just have, and I'm sure what Ash would have said the same. You see, it's personality. You know, you see the absolute extremes of, you know, from Miles Davis through Brazilian, through Genesis, through, you know, Peter Frampton, Supertramp, whoever. You know, they're all little aspects and facets of your journey, and it's you know, it's great to see the span of that, because I know my record collection's equally as diverse. You know, everything from you know, the GAD stuff, or to prog rock, to, you know, light jazz. I've just picked up some albums recently by Manhattan Transfer. They're great. And I've also just not long started getting into Blood, Sweat and Tears.
Exactly. I mean, there's so much, and I mean, there's not an album there that's got Bernard Purdie on it. He's one of our favourite players. So we could go to, you know, like Aretha Live with Purdie, or Bill Withers Live with James Gadson. There's so many. Or the album I've been listening to a lot recently. It's the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack with that's on all the American stuff. It's mainly James Gadson with like Tavares and Yvonne Elliman and all those guys. And then the guy with the Bee Gees was Dennis Byron or Brian, I can't remember. Fantastic player. But I love that record, you know. So,
and then you've got,
hey, I've got to stop somewhere.
And then, you know, Picaro as well. There's another name that hasn't.
I mean,
in that selection, but
well, I'll tell you why. If you look at all those records, there's nothing past about the latest record in there is probably the Songs of the Key of Life, which is 76. So Jeff wouldn't have been an influence till beyond that, you know, like around 1980, 80 onwards, you know. Yeah. In fact, even though I discovered that even though One Trick Pony came out in 1980, apparently when I read about the recording of the album, Paul Simon said they started working on that straight after Still Crazy. Well, Still Crazy was 1975,
Yeah, so it was a long.
So this album, One Trick Pony is probably like 76 or 7. So they're all pre-80, and
Yeah,
I didn't start listening to Jeff properly till around that time.
yeah,
So that's probably a thing. It's all kind of 60s up until 76 or something.
yeah. There's some great stuff. I mean, I know we discussed last time we had a coffee in town. We were talking about the Tito Puente Gad Ray Barat
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
That's an insane album.
I know, and and really, what I did this morning, I just stood in front of the records and thought, well, I always play that, and that, and then these were and so it took me about 2 minutes to put that together.
To just pull a selection.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I could do it
whatever.
again easily with the, but these would always come out first, So I thought I'll stop there and see how we get on.
Yeah. Well, no, thanks for pulling them out. It's
yeah. I mean, because I think it's great to, like you say, it shows somebody's journey and personality and what makes up how you've got to be the player you are, by listening, because you are what you listen to, really.
Yeah. Well, that's the same. I can't remember who it was. Someone was saying that, especially for bands of back in the day when they were, or you say, oh, they sound a lot like Zeppelin, or they sound a lot like
right,
whoever, and
the
they went
whatever, yeah,
and someone said, he says, oh, the thing is, you start sounding like yourself when you've been influenced by so many different people that you can no longer trace the influences back.
And I think it's very important. I mean, even an amazing, unique sounding player as Tony Williams said that he always would copy to the note. He said, I could sound like Art Blakey or Elvin or Lewis Hayes. He could sound like all those guys. I don't think it's anything to avoid. I think it's something to really pursue, to purposely figure out, how does John Guerin get that hi-hat to close before beat 1? It doesn't close on beat 1. It closes at, I mean, it's about having, I don't think it's about being, what's the word? Analytical too much. That's too cold a word, but I think you can be inquisitive.
Yeah.
About your craft,
And you want to know all of those, the bits of that, especially in what you've done, which has been the session thing of people are going to say, can you play it like this player or in the style of that player?
Yeah.
Because that's what they'll hear.
I'm generally going to say, well, I can't do that, but I know the kind of reference you mean, so I'll kind of, there's no way I'm going to sound like Ringo or Steve Gadd or John Bonham or John Guerin, but I kind of know the direction then, So
it gives you a little pot to go into and go, it's a bit of this, a bit of that.
Yeah. Maybe the tuning is different and the parts that you're going to come up with might be a tip of the hat that way. And you can bet, all the great sportsmen like tennis players or basketball players or football have all watched Roger Federer or Pele or Michael Jordan and analyze them, and watch them for hours, and mimic their moves or their, for sure. I think it's a natural thing it's a natural thing to love one of your favorite players and kind of mimic in a way, even to the way you have your tom set or the cymbals or the, just you mimic that for a while,
You do, and you try and get into the like you say, the inquisitiveness. You try and get into the reason why they did it like that, or the reason why they might
that's
set
right.
up a certain way, or use a certain, why did Gad really like a really clangy ride? Because it sounded great when he started leaving his stick on it,
Yeah, and it's dry. It doesn't have too many overtones, and so it records well, and it's not too loud. And,
So for all those reasons, you go, oh, I sort of see what he was doing, I mean, we've
Right.
for those people listening, the last episode that you'll have gone out was a deep dive into the Beatles stuff. But particularly the last three numbers that they did in the 90s, and then the one they put out last year.
Oh,
Free
great.
as a Bird, Real Love, Now and Then.
Now and then, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, and a look at what made those great. And you know, talk about getting into that sort of thing. The inquisitive side of Ashley and me took over, and so we decided to re-record Free as a Bird.
Wow, what a great idea.
And
yeah,
you know, found some isolated stems on YouTube or wherever, pulled them into Logic, lined them up, put loads of towels all over the drums, and got, you know, chains on the cymbals and all that, and did it, you know,
and see what I think is important about that is that you're it's not that you're mimicking something, but you're kind of almost respecting a kind of style, and you're drawing on that inspiration directly, you know, and you're aware of how to create that sound.
And it does, and it, you know, Ashley would tell you, and he talked about it in the episode, that he decided to take on not only the bass part, but he laid up all the harmonies, all the vocals.
No way, really? Wow. Okay.
Picked that apart, and he says, you know, he now thinks of that totally differently to how he did before, you know, of how they made that sound, you know, and even
that's right.
The end of, you know, loads of reverb on John Lennon and Paul McCartney's voices, but George Harrison had none. He
is that reverb. Right? Yeah. See,
by that point.
Wow.
So it's like, so you know, you really sort of got into the, and it is, as you say, it's respecting it to the sort of the highest level.
Yeah.
But trying to do it a bit of justice and find what makes it so great. And
right.
Yeah, I think we did, which was really cool.
I think you know, and if you are going to be a freelance musician and you're going to be called by different people, you know, they're normally going to give you a bit of a direction that they want to go. Oh, it's kind of we want to try this kind of thing. Or, I mean, maybe they won't, but generally they will. I mean, I remember Van Morrison saying to me something like, this is, think of it like a Curtis Mayfield thing. And I mean, Curtis Mayfield is quite a broad span, but I kind of knew what he meant. It's kind of, so I thought of kind of very dry drums, tight, not too busy, you know, and I knew where he was. If he'd have said a Motown thing, I would have thought something else, or disco or Ringo, or, you know, it's important to kind of know the history of the instrument. I think it's like if you were going to study painting or photography or something, you'd know about all the masters, you know, you'd know about Picasso and Rembrandt and etc. You know.
Yeah, it's knowing your craft.
And you'd go and you'd draw on those, even if you become your own. Hopefully, you become your own. You express your own things. You know, you need to study the masters, really. I think.
Yeah, it's the study and the appreciation as well of why they were the masters. You know, why they.
I mean, you know, like even, you know, I think we tend to think of somebody like Ringo as being a lone entity in his own little world in the Beatles, but for sure he knew about all those records and Earl Palmer and all those guys. You know, I mean, he may not have known the name because a lot of those guys weren't credited on records back then. But he sure would have known the players. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's it, and knew the sound and what was going on.
Yeah, and he would try and emulate certain feels and shuffles, and for sure.
It. And you know, he listened to what was going on. You know, he knew what was happening at the time.
Yeah, and it kind of, if I'm I teach a little bit occasionally, go into various colleges, you know, and just do a day or whatever, and I can't say it annoys me because that's but it does bother me a bit when people don't bother to do their homework. I mean, it's so easy now. When I was a kid, it was almost impossible. The only way you could find out stuff was by hanging out with another drummer or whatever, who maybe had a decent record collection, who could say, listen to that and that, or going to the record shop and browsing and I wonder if that's any good. It costs you a fortune, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can get on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and you can watch Elvin or Gad or the Meters or Stevie or Bob Marley. Any of those albums are there like that, you know.
Yeah.
And then there's the Slow Down app where you can.
Oh yeah.
Change, you know, bring down the tempos of all this stuff, and it's just. So there's no excuse now. So when I say to people, you know, have you listened to this or this, and they go, nah, I think, well, why though? And I think it's because they're not inquisitive. You know, you've got to be, you've got to want to delve into this. Otherwise, you're not. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's you know, the point that anyone should take from this sort of thing is that's the way to better yourself, you know, in any sort of aspect of whatever you do, whether you're a drummer, bass player, musician, whatever. Do that, you know, go and look into the past and find. I mean, you've seen I've got a bloody archive of loads of old rhythm magazines, modern drummers, and reference books and all sorts. Yeah, it constantly fascinates me to look. I mean, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Even sometimes just seeing. I mean, before there was any YouTube or social media or anything, to be able to see a picture of somebody's kit, a player that you loved, like anybody, like say Ronnie Stevenson or Picaro or Gad or somebody, you couldn't see pictures of their kit. So to any little snapshot from behind the kit was like, oh, wow. And you kind of check out the angle of the toms and the snare and try and copy it, you know. And so even just looking at a photograph can sometimes be inspiring, and it gets the juices flowing for that night. Okay, I'm going to be on fire tonight because I've looked at that picture for 10 minutes, you know.
Yeah, and there's always that thought as well, you know, if I'm sitting doing a session or something, it's even if I just hear the music, I think, oh, what would so and so do?
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, that's very important.
You know,
I mean, I've heard. Have you heard Steve Gadd say that? He said he'll often be thinking, what would, I mean, for argument's sake, somebody like maybe Roger Hawkins or something, what would Roger Hawkins play on this? And then he'll play what something like Roger might play. But of course, it sounds like a bit like Steve Gadd. But the influence is from, you wouldn't know unless he mentioned, I was drawing on a Harvey Mason thing or a James Gadsden thing, or, you know.
And on that note, I'm going to wrap up here, and feels weird doing this on my own, but thanks again, Neal, for all your time. It's been a
thank you,
pleasure.
Charlie. It's great to chat. I had written a little sign off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which was includes the inquisitive word, which we've used a lot with, but because people, you know, they'll often say, "Have you got a little?" What would you say to young guys? And this, I summed it up in these couple of little sentences. To be inquisitive, immerse yourself as much as you can in it all. Work hard, be patient, and enjoy it all, because it's pretty good fun.
And on that note, thanks, Neal, and thanks to
brilliant stuff. Nice one, Charlie.
We'll
catch up soon, I guess.
Yeah, catch up soon. See you later, and thanks again.
Great stuff. Thanks for doing it. Thanks for asking me. I appreciate it.